Today, I just really want to have a conversation with you about something I've been thinking a lot about recently, which is how do we cope when we are feeling maybe a bit depressed or anxious or spiritually burnt out. Now, we're not going to get all the answers today because it's such a massive topic. And I think it's a really important issue for us to talk about because we don't often talk about mental health. Not as much as we should. I've been reading from 1 Kings 18 and 1 Kings 19, the story of Elijah. We'll talk about that in a few moments' time. But it's got a couple of really interesting insights, I think, that can help us when we're thinking about this topic. And you might know the story. It's about Elijah. And in 1 Kings 18, Elijah had been on Mount Carmel, and he'd had this big spiritual confrontation with the prophets of Baal. There were 400 prophets of Baal, there were 400 prophets of Asherah, and Elijah had sort of won that spiritual battle. But immediately afterwards, he was really stressed, and he was depressed, and he was burnt out. He was absolutely exhausted. And in his state of exhaustion, he feared for his life. He thought the queen was going to kill him. So he ran away. And there's a really interesting description of Elijah's mental condition in 1 Kings 19 that you might be able to relate to if you struggle with mental health at the moment. And the first thing is he sought isolation. He didn't want to be around anybody. And I get like that when I get tired and stressed and, our mental health isn't where it should be. And one of the things I was kind of thinking, one of the things I observe really when I talk to people is that when they're not feeling on top of it mentally, they stop coming to church. And I just think it's a really unhealthy thing to do. It's hard being around people when we're not on top of it. But, we've got to do it. We can't just stop coming to church. We've got to stay in community to the best of our ability, because it only gets worse and it only gets harder if we just sort of isolate ourselves from other people. But that's what Elijah did. That's what I do sometimes, catch myself doing it. And maybe you do that as well. And also, Elijah was very confused. In 1 Kings 19, verse 3, it says that he fled for his life. So he obviously wanted to protect himself and save his life. But in verse 4, he then prays, "O Lord, take away my life." So it's almost like he doesn't know whether he wants to live or whether he wants to die. He kind of wants to fight on, but he also wants to curl up and die as well. And we get like that, don't we? If we are struggling mentally, we get very confused. There are moments when we just want to give up. There are moments when we want to fight on. And it's a really, really confusing space for us to be in. And also, I think, thirdly, we must not underestimate just how exhausting depression and burnout and anxiety actually is. In verse 5 of 1 Kings 19, it says of Elijah, he lay down and fell asleep. And it is really exhausting, isn't it? If you're not mentally in a strong place, it is utterly exhausting. And I found during my times like that, all I've wanted to do is just sleep. Maybe you find that as well. But that being the case, how did God respond then to Elijah when he was in a low place? And how does God respond to us? Well, the first thing is, and these are really simple things, they're very practical. The first thing is that God lets him sleep and he feeds him. And there are two occasions in this 1 Kings 19 passage where God feeds him and lets him sleep. And then he wakes him up and he feeds him and he lets him sleep through the ministry of an angel. But I think there's something really important there, that when we're not really on top of it mentally, we need to rest. We need to eat. We don't need to be on the go for God all the time. If we're not rested Christians, then we're no good to God, right? But also we won't get over this difficulty unless we are well rested. So I would say to you, if you are going through a difficult time at the moment with your mental health, get sleep, make sure you eat. Healing takes time. You're not going to get through it in 24 hours. The world can wait. God can wait. He's not in any hurry. Just make sure that you get some rest and you get some sleep. And then secondly, I love the fact that God then gives Elijah gentle hope for the future. The angel says to Elijah in verse 7, get up and eat, otherwise the journey will be too much for you. Now, he doesn't tell Elijah where the journey is. He doesn't tell him where he's going to go, but he just gives him this little hint, that God isn't finished with him yet, and that there is a journey. And that there is a place to go. This isn't the end of Elijah's story. And then Elijah gets up and he goes on the journey. And in verse 9, he reaches the cave on Mount Horeb. And what does he do? It says in verse 9, he slept again. And I love that. I just love the simplicity of, sleep, eat. It's not the end. God's got a promise for you. So what do we learn for ourselves when we're feeling maybe a bit spiritually dry, or when we might be a bit depressed or burnt out or whatever? I would say 3 things. Firstly, be kind to yourself. That's the most important thing. Be kind to yourself. Eat, sleep, rest. Don't be driven by other people's agendas. Take time for healing. Take time to recuperate and recover. The world can wait. God can wait. There's no hurry. So make sure that you get the rest you need. Secondly, remember that it's not the end of your journey. God hasn't given up on you. He's got somewhere for you to go next. He's got something planned for you, but he's not going to unfold that plan for you until you're ready and in a place to do it. And then finally, I would say, to the best of your ability, keep showing up with God. Now, it's not easy to do that because we might want to isolate ourselves, but just keep showing up with God. And I'm a priest in the Church of England, and there's a liturgy we use sometimes called the Book of Common Prayer. And there's one line in it that sustained me for many, many years when I was really struggling with my mental health. And the line is in a prayer, and it says, it's our duty and our joy at all times and in all places to worship you, Heavenly Father. And I love that because it really sustained me when I wasn't in a good mental place, because it reminded me constantly for quite a few years that sometimes worship is a joy and sometimes it's a duty. And actually it doesn't matter to God. It is our duty and our joy at all times and in all places to give you praise, Heavenly Father. So I would say, even if you're not feeling joyful in the faith, even if you're disconnected to God, even if you don't feel like worshipping, do it out of duty, because you know God's there, you know God's real, you know he loves you. You might not be able to feel it at the moment, and you might not feel it in yourself, so it might not be a joy to worship God, but even out of duty, keep worshipping God, stay connected to God, and eventually you will come out the other side stronger in faith. And that's what happened to me. After my first wife died, I would say for 4 years, 5 years, worship was a duty. It was not a joy. I did not feel close to God. I didn't feel close to the church. I didn't feel close to other Christians. I really struggled. I hadn't lost my faith, but I really struggled with it. And so for 4 or 5 years, worship was a duty and not a joy. But that's okay with God. He doesn't mind as long as we keep turning up, keep showing up for him. To the best of our ability, as I say, because there may be days if you really are struggling with your mental health, with burnout, stress, depression, anxiety, or whatever, that it may be just too difficult to worship God. And that's when you need to eat, and that is when you need to sleep. So look after yourself. Eat, sleep, and rest. Secondly, remember that this is not the end of your story. God has somewhere for you to go in the future when you are ready for the journey. And thirdly, to the best of your ability, keep showing up with God, even if it's out of duty and not out of joy. Good. Well, thanks for being with me. If this has been useful, then please do click the like button or subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Take care. Bye bye.